So the next topic is conversion and validation. Conversion and validation are actually two separate things. Conversion guarantees that data has proper type and validation guarantees that data meets business requirements. So what does this mean? Let's see an example. So here is our index page. I removed the action attribute so that when this button submits we remain on the same page, and we are going to do conversion validation on this field total number, which is of type int mentioned over here. Okay, and for showing error messages related to conversion validation we use another tag, which is the message tag. Message, and let's close this. We have to specify the for attribute, and in the for attribute we have to specify the message applies to which tag. So we want to display messages for this tag, so we'll copy the ID and paste it over here. So all messages related to this input text tag will be displayed over here. So let's run this page and see the difference between conversion and validation. So over here let me enter a number, something like this. So we get the standard conversion error message. We get a conversion error because we don't have the proper data type. Over here, if you see the animal bean, the data type is int and we are not entering an int. So this is a conversion error. This is not a validation error. Now suppose that we have some business requirement that a number between 0 and 100 should be entered over here. So if I enter a bigger number and if I press this, I do not get the conversion error, but this is a validation error according to our business logic. So validation says that guarantees data meets business requirement. This doesn't meet our business requirement. So later on we'll see tags for handling validation. Now conversion is a two-way process. We can apply the conversion tags to input tags as well as output tags. Validation is one-way process. We can apply this only to the input tags. So input tags like input text, select tags and all, we can apply it to that. So these are the standard converter tags: convert datetime, convert number, and f converter. Over here we haven't actually mentioned any converter, but by default we have an implicit converter which tries to convert this into an int. And the default converters usually meet your business needs. Let's now understand the first tag, which is convert datetime. So I already specified a date field over here, which is of type date, java.util.date, and I placed the getter and setter. So in this page I created an input field and value bounded to the date field, and I also placed a message tag with the for attribute mentioning the ID of our input text. So let's see how to use convert datetime. So over here we have to place the tag inside of this input text tag. So let me close this and create the ending tag for this, and then let's place this on a separate line, and inside this we'll place the tag f convert datetime. So we can specify a pattern for the date like this. So in India the pattern is date followed by month followed by year. So it's like this. Let's save and run this example. So let's enter some date, something like this, 2012, which is a legal date, right? So if I press this I don't get an error. Now let's type an illegal date, something like this, and we get a conversion error. If the standard error message is not to your liking, you can also specify conversion error over here like this. In the input tag, go over here, converter message is invalid date format, something like this. So let's save and run this example again, and now if I enter invalid date we get our message. So converter is two-way. It can be applied to input as well as output component. So let's apply to output component, output text, and let's bind it to the same date value, animal bean dot date. Okay, and let's put the converter tag, convert datetime. Now instead of pattern over here, let's specify some other attribute like date style. So let's keep this as long. So you can specify date style like short, medium, long, or full. So let's save this and run this example. Let's try to enter a number. And what you get over here is the long pattern. This was our pattern and this is the pattern which is meant for long. But pattern is much more specific than mentioning style. We can also mention a time style and we can also mention a type, because this date style or time style can vary according to the locale. So if user has some other locale set in his browser, then the style over here can vary. Let's consider the next tag, which is convert number. So over here, let me just delete this off because this is a date field, and let's delete this off too. So for convert number, I created a field named num, which is of type double, and I created the getter and setter. So over here, I also created an input text tag, which is value bound to the num field, and I also created a message for the num field. So let's paste this over here. So this message now applies to the errors for this input text tag. Let's now apply the convert number tag. So over here, let me first put this, the ending tag, and let's go down and f convert number this time, and let's close this tag first. Just like convert datetime had a pattern field, this tag also has a pattern field. So pattern is equal to, let's see a pattern in action, 00.00. Save and run this example. So the pattern is 00.00. So let's use that pattern over here. Let's see 5, 6 and 7. So there is one number extra, and you can see it is rounded off to properly 2 places after the decimal point. In the pattern, you can also specify whether it's a percentage. So if I put a percentage sign over here, then save and run the example. Let's enter something over here, 78%, and it gets formatted according to your pattern. However, if I forget to put the percentage sign, I get a conversion error because it was mentioned in the pattern. Basically, do not go too heavy on using this tag convert number. Making a user compulsory enter percentage is not a good thing. So try to use implicit conversion as much as possible. Now the third tag, converter, is used for designing custom converters. If these two tags do not suffice to your requirements, or the implicit converters are not as per your needs, you can always use fconverter to create custom converters. So validation means data has to meet your business requirements. So it can be only applied to input components. So let's understand the first tag, which is validate length. So we will apply the validate length validator to this tag. So first of all, let's put this, and we can have a message tag for this first. Message for, and let's go over here, close this tag, and copy the ID from here to here. Let's now specify the tag, which is f validate length, and let's close this tag first, and we can specify the minimum characters and the maximum number of characters. Let's say we want the user to enter more than 4 characters, or you should enter minimum 4 characters. The maximum characters is, let's say, 6. So the user has to enter at least 4 characters and maximum 6 characters. Let's check this. So over here, let's enter less than 2 characters. You get an error. Let's enter more than 6 characters. You get an error. And if you enter between 4 and 6 characters, you don't get an error. So if the standard message is not proper for you, you can always specify your own message like this. Validator message input should be between 4 and 6 letters. Okay. Now if you run, so if you enter invalid character, we get the validation message which we have mentioned over here. Now let's study the next tag, which is validate long range. So it applies for a number, and Same like this, we have a minimum and maximum number which specifies the range. So let's see that. Over here, our total number is a number. So over here, let's first close this tag. Okay, and let's take this down. So we already have a message for this tag. So go here, f validate long range. Okay, and like previously, we can mention a high value and a lower value. So let's mention 0 and 100. So let's try this out. If we mention a lesser number, we get an error. It says that it's expecting a value between 0 and 100. So if we mention a higher number, still we get an error. And if we mention a proper number, we don't get this error. Now validate double range is exactly similar to validate long range. Only thing is it applies to double. So over here, we already have a double number. So if you see over here, num is a double. So over here, let's remove this converter and let's put a validator. Validate double range, and minimum is, let's say, 1.33 and maximum is 5.99. Let's save and run this example. So range is from 1.33 to 5.99. So let's put more than 5.99. We get a validation error, and if we press less than 1.33, we get the error. But if we place properly between that, we don't get an error. Now let's understand validate regex. It's based upon a regular expression. So over here, instead of validate length, let's put a validate regex, and then you have to specify a pattern. So let's specify a pattern over here. What this means is any number of characters followed by AT. So let's run this example. So let's enter animal which doesn't end with AT, and we get the error. If we enter a character which ends with AT, we don't get that error. Now validate required is perhaps the most simplest and the most used tag. So over here, instead of this, if I mention validate required, this means that this text is required. So let's try this out. If I don't enter anything, I get error. If I enter something, I don't get that error. The required validation is so common that we don't even need to use this tag. Instead of this, each input tag, whether they are the select tags or any kind of input tags, we can have a required attribute, and we can mention true over here. So this will work exactly like f validate required tag, and it works the same. So now we have seen this standard validated text. What if none of this matches what you want to validate? For example, your business requirement is something else than this. It doesn't match what is provided by the standard validators. In this case, we can actually design a custom validation. So let's see that. So let's say we want to provide a validation that the total number is between 0 and 100. So even though this control over here provides that feature, but let's design it ourselves. So over here, we can mention this. So what we are saying over here is this method validate age in this bean, which we'll see later on, is going to be one of the validators for this input text tag. So let's see that method. And for your custom validation method, the method header has to be like this only. So it takes a faces context argument, UI component, and the object, which is the value. This is the value we have to validate. So first of all, we convert it into an integer, then we check if it's within the range we want, and then we create a new message. This is the error message we want to print, and then we throw a new validate exception along with the message in it. So as you can see, it's very easy to create custom validators. You just don't have to depend upon this. You can create your own logic, whatever you want in this method, but the method header has to be this, and then you have to hook up over here. So let's run this method. So let's try to enter lesser value, -5, and we get that validation error. and let's try to enter a bigger number. We get a validation error. If you enter a range number in the proper range between 0 and 100, you don't get the validation error. And by the way, by mistake I named this method as validate age. It should be something like validate total number, but the method name doesn't matter as such.